Hey, welcome back everyone. So what we're going to be looking at here in this very next Open Zeppelin challenge is we're going to be looking at the Fallout challenge, and we're going to talk about scope, we're going to talk about the constructor. We're going to explain to you the interesting things that are going on with this challenge that makes us pay attention to these two concepts. Let's go ahead and take a look at the challenge and let's get started. Today's Friday, May 10th. 2019, and when we get done, I'm going to tell you why that's an important day to me. Cool. All right, so when we come over here and we take a look at this challenge, one of the first things that you'll need to do if you haven't done so already to get you set up is you're going to want to go ahead and need to navigate to the ethernaut.zeppelins.solutions. You'll also need to have funded your MetaMask wallet, connected with your MetaMask wallet, and selected to get a new instance. You'll need to be connected on the Ropsten network. This is one of the test networks, so it doesn't cost you any actual Ethereum. This will be test Ethereum that you can get from the faucet. You can do that through the MetaMask browser plugin. This is just simply a hot wallet that you have that runs inside of your Chrome browser or your Brave browser if you want to use that. Also, think I mentioned earlier that it's used on, I can't remember the other browser, but anyway, there's another browser as well. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get started here. And what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at this Fallout function. You'll notice that I've already mined my instance down here. And so the first thing that we want to do is we actually want to look at the code that's in this actual smart contract. So what I want to do is I want to, in essence, take advantage of this contract. So in order to do that, you need to kind of have an understanding of basically what's going on in this code, and then you need to understand something called the constructor, what that constructor actually is and what it does, and then how we have a vulnerability here. So let's go out here and actually look in the code. And so this is the same code. I just put some notes here, and this is what I'm going to be talking through. And so the first thing that we look at here is, again, it's just your standard Solidity contract. We just have your pragma statement here at the beginning. We're importing the ownable.solil Open Zeppelin smart contract, which we pulled down from their libraries. You can just use your npm to go ahead and do that. Cool. Then we're going to go ahead and we mark that this particular contract that we are creating is going to be called the Fallout contract. It's an ownable contract, meaning that it's inheriting all of the characteristics of that ownable.sol that we just imported. Cool. All right, so then we see we have our mapping, which is just in essence creating a data type that will map our address to how much has been allocated or what we consider an allocation, and that is the that mapping, so how much has been allocated. And so down here we kind of see all of the rules that are involved with that data type. Cool. So one of the things that you need to kind of keep in mind is you have a bit of a Highlander rule for any contract that you create. There is going to be a constructor function that's going to be created. In essence, a function that's going to run basically just one time. And so this constructor function that just runs one time, you can add additional logic to it, which is what they've intended to do here. So when you do that, that's fine. You just need to ensure that you don't have a mismatch in your name. And that's what you have in this problem. And I'll actually talk about a vulnerability that actually had a really big problem with this and lost a lot of money. All right, cool. So when we look at this contract here, we see that we have this Fallout contract. It's ownable. We already kind of talked through this. But then we see that this is supposed to be our constructor, and we're doing the Fallout function. It's public payable. Well, Fallout, if we look here, is actually misspelled as FAL1 out, right? So they misspelled this constructor, and that's going to have basically have an empty constructor is going to be called. In other words, it's going to be, this function is going to be in an empty constructor called this right here, right? And actually, when we look at this, we see that we've marked this as public and payable. We also, since this based on the scope of this, the way this has been set up, we'll be able to call this and basically, in essence, call this function, since it is only supposed to run one time when we construct the contract. It is not it's not the one. It's the one that was constructed to run one time is going to be with the correct name. This one is not the correct name, so actually when this is ran, this will be ran as just a regular old function, and therefore provide the vulnerabilities that are involved in the additional information that we have down here. So what we see here is, what we need to be the message.sender in order to become the owner, and allocations is going to be whatever we sent in as our value, right? And so so once we are the owner of the contract, really we don't really have to do anything else. All the rest of this stuff down here is just standard banking functions, allocating balance, collecting allocations, sending allocations, doing allocations, basically just kind of I don't think there may be other vulnerabilities down here. We can go through here maybe and look at some of this stuff. We've got some stuff that's only the owner is supposed to be able to do. So of course, collecting allocations, that's another vulnerability because we can become the owner up here because of this misspell. Sweet. So let's go ahead and we kind of talked through that. All right, so let's go ahead and look at my notes on this one. Oh wait, hold on, this is not the right one. Let's see. Oh yeah, so this is the right one. So one other thing too that I wanted to mention here is this Rubixa. So Rubixa is actually kind of a classic example of this vulnerability. And so when we look at Rubixa, they actually changed its name from dynamic pyramid, but it didn't rename the constructor method in its contract. And so what I've done here is I've taken a snippet of that actual contract out so you guys can see it, and then we can kind of talk through this vulnerability and where that really caused them a lot of problems. I don't remember exactly how much this cost, but it was several $1 million that this ended up costing based on this contract misnaming. I think it was like 16 million or something. So contract Rubixa is, so here, they're kind of, creating the constructor here. So they're defining the contract, and inside that contract, here's our data types. They're saying that they have the address, that's private, whoever the owner is. And then they're creating this function that is kind of what we were doing before, which was the same as the contract name. That is going to be the dynamic pyramid. Well, what they've done here is they've renamed the change of the contract name, but they didn't rename the change of the constructor function that had the constraints for the owner being the message.sender, which we are also using up here in the data type. So what happened here is that they left themselves vulnerable because now anyone who had the ability to call this function had the ability to be the owner, and therefore could then call the collect all fees, which would be basically draining the contract, right? So that is where the vulnerability was, and that's how somebody basically drained this contract. Holy cannoli, Jeff Spicoli, that's crazy. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So we're going to go out here back to the Open Zeppelin challenge, and when we see our function here, so let's just go ahead and make this bigger so we know what the code looks like. We kind of just walk through this. So let's just look at our vulnerabilities. I'll clear this out so this makes it a little easier to see. So I'm just going to await. There we go. Await contract dot owner. We'll look and see who that is. It's not me, right? Because remember, I was 0x8. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to, so we've looked at the owner. So await, we'll just go ahead and contract dot owner. Let's see who that is. So we are not the owner, right? And so what we want to do is we need to be able to call that poorly named fallout function and then pass in our arguments, right? And so that's what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do that. So we're going to go over here and we're going to do an await contract dot fallout, and then we need to pass in to this the from, and it's going to be coming from the player, whoever the player is, and then the value is going to go to way, and it's going to be 0.0000, whatever we want to put in here, right? 0.9. All right, so cool. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pass that in. And so in order to do this, we have to mine this transaction. So there's those, that way that we wanted to send. We got to go ahead and send that over to the contract. So we're going to go ahead and send that in. And so there we go. We sent the transaction in. Let that run for a second. Now, again, while that's running, what's going to happen is then we've called this poorly named function that gave us the ability to become the owner. Remember, that was our vulnerability, and so that was because it was a poorly named constructor, right? And so there's our transaction hash. We should have a good transaction. I just got my confirmation pop up, so I should be able to do kind of my await owner again. And so now I see I'm the new owner. Outstanding. Congratulations, we've now went through the second function in the fallout function, and you've seen that vulnerability. So where would this come into play? How could this cause problems? Again, when you are upgrading contracts, you just got to remember that the constructor function runs every time the contract gets created, and it's going to be ran based on the name of the contract. So if you rename a contract, whether it's a misspelling or if it's a new name in general, it will cause a vulnerability, and you need to be aware of that vulnerability so that it doesn't bite you. Outstanding. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this. The importance of Friday, the 10th of May, to me is really unique because I actually have my mother who has her birthday today. And I love my mother very, very much like all of you do. And this weekend happens to be Mother's Day. In addition to that, my mother-in-law, I'm blessed to have a wonderful mother-in-law, and they share birthdays. So I actually have two mothers that have the same birthday on today. What a really cool, freaking awesome birthday. So hopefully everybody had a really cool experience here with this walkthrough, and it's been educational for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at tcooksey1972@gmail.com. Check us out at nomagicjustlogic.com. You can also get signed up for one of our training sessions over at Blockchain Training Alliance. Reach out to Chad and Melissa. They will get you signed up, and I would love to see you guys in class. Cool. Have a great weekend, guys. We'll see you next time.